So this week is our second week of our series Advance. If you didn't get a chance to check out the first week, you can look on YouTube or you can check out our podcast. Our speaker this week is Mark Pomery.
Well, hey there, Elevate fam. Great to have you with us for our online experience as we continue to power into 2022. You know, we declared that we're coming for you, 2022, that this is going to be a year where we take new ground. And we're already hearing phenomenal reports. People getting new jobs, like dream jobs, promotions. We've seen people launch businesses in the beginning of this year and starting to see them gain some traction. We've seen some health breakthroughs already. And, you know, I could go on, but the thing I'm the most excited about is hearing more and more reports of people who are taking new ground and experiencing new levels in their relationship as Jesus followers. And boy, this is so encouraging. So we're going to continue to lean into this idea that new ground in a new year with our series that we launched last week called Advance. And last week, we talked about the importance of advancing with wisdom. Knowledge is important and wisdom is even more important. Solomon, in fact, said that seeking wisdom ought to be at the top of our list. And so look, if you missed that, I strongly encourage you to either go back and watch that or listen to that message on our podcast. Any of the major podcast platforms, just search for us, Elevate Church Perth, and that message will be there and that'll catch you up. Today, week 2, I want to talk about the opportunities we have to advance with work, or I could have called it advance at work, but you know, whether you're self-employed or an employee, in your workspace, how we can advance, how we can take new ground. That's the focus of today. Because the reality is that too many people view work as a chore that they have to do so that they can ultimately get to what they want to do. You know, I'm going to just kind of grind it out during the week so that I can get to the weekend. You know, I'm just going to hang in there for my working life so I can enjoy my retirement. I'm going to work these 11 months so I can take a holiday. And look, many of us will spend on average about 1/3 of our working life working. So why not look for opportunities to take new ground of joy, new ground of purpose, new ground of influence. Now this message today is very much a companion message to a series we taught, I think about 2 years ago, called Made for Mondays. And again, that's available on our podcast. I think it was a 3 or 4 week series. And it really leans into this idea that God has designed us to work on purpose, with purpose, for a purpose. And that he can use you and wants to use you in the marketplace to extend his kingdom, to grow in influence, and to ultimately experience the purpose he has for you. But before I get into how we can really commit our work to God and lean into God and see him work in us and through us in work, let me bust a myth. Now, if you've been kind of orbiting the churchosphere for any length of time, you may have heard of this myth. It's not one that comes up all the time, but it comes up occasionally. And if you buy into this myth, it'll potentially set you on the wrong trajectory with how you view and how you approach work. And the myth goes something like this: that work was and is God's punishment towards humanity. That it started with Adam and Eve, and it was a result of their disobedience that they were put to work. This idea, you know, as if to say that before Adam and Eve disobeyed, they were just experiencing in the Garden of Eden, experiencing resort style living, binge watching as much Netflix as they want. God even disabled the shaming, "Are you still watching?" message. So, they could just keep going. Then they disobeyed God, and God punished them, and he canceled their resort style living, and he put them to work. That's essentially the myth, and I wonder how many of you have heard that. Maybe drop something in the comments if you've heard that myth before. But let me bust that myth. First of all, God worked. The first recorded account of God doing anything was him working, him creating the heavens and the earth and all that's in it and the humanity that he created. He worked for 6 days. He was the first ever self-employed person in history. And then after working for 6 days, he took a day off, which was the first ever recorded weekend. So God modeled work. Okay, that's first of all. And then there's this idea that Adam and Eve enjoyed resort-style living, then they disobeyed, then they got punished, is simply not true. All I would encourage someone to do, if they've bought that myth or if they're espousing that myth, read your Bible, people. Facts matter, because in Genesis chapter 2, verse 15, this is actually what happened. God took the man, so God has just created, this is his pinnacle of creation. He's spent the first 5 days creating other stuff. Day 6 creates Adam, and he took the man and set him down in the Garden of Eden to work the ground and keep it in order. Eve hadn't even been created yet. This was the sequence of events. God created Adam, then he put him to work. And it wasn't punishment, it was a gift. In fact, it was the first gift God gave to humanity, the opportunity to work, the opportunity to be productive, the opportunity to create, the opportunity to contribute, the opportunity to find purpose in our day through work. And by the way, if you think that work is punishment, then please stop praying for God to work in your life, because that's just cruel, okay? All right. So the starting point for experiencing purpose in our work is to commit your work to God. To actually understand that He's your real boss, that the work you and I do, we're actually doing it as servants of God. And this is something that Paul wrote. If you've got your Bible app, how about you pop that open to Colossians chapter 3. And this has been one of my guiding principles that I've tried to live and certainly teach for us to get a clear perspective of who we're actually working for, who we're ultimately serving, who we're called to glorify and honor when it comes to our work. And the context of this is Paul, who was like an entrepreneur of the early church. He wrote this letter to the church in a place called Colossae. And this slice of the letter, he directed to servants and slaves. So if anybody, had a reason to begrudge their work and to feel a bit ripped off, it's probably going to be the slaves and the servants, because they, by nature of the job, don't have choices. They have to do what their master, their earthly master, demands of them, expects of them, commands them. And Paul wrote to them like something that on the surface doesn't make sense, and yet it actually speaks to the core of who's ultimately our boss. Servants, in other translations you'll see slaves, do what you're told by your earthly masters. And don't just do the minimum that'll get you by. Do your best. Work from the heart for your real master, for God, confident that you'll get paid in full when you come into your inheritance. See, doing the bare minimum doesn't glorify God. Doing our best glorifies God. Solomon, who we leaned heavily into last week, he wrote this in his Proverbs: Put God in charge of your work, then what you've planned will take place. This big idea that you're not actually working for your boss, you're not actually ultimately working for your clients. We, as followers of Jesus, are ultimately called and created to work for God and to glorify Him and to honor Him in our work. Now, I acknowledge not everyone's as excited about work as other people. In fact, I came across these tweets recently of people describing how, or the circumstances surrounding how they got fired from their job. Here's the first one. Called in sick to go to a Who concert. My picture ended up on the front page of the paper. It was hanging in the office the next day. What a bummer. And yep, they got fired. Here's one. My friend vented on Facebook about how much she hated her job and accidentally tagged her boss. They fired her in the comments. And this one. When my boss caught me dozing at my desk, I raised my head and slowly said, Amen. Martin Luther King Jr. famously said these words about finding purpose in our work, glorifying God in our work. He said, if a man is called to be a street sweeper, he should sweep streets even as Michelangelo painted, or Beethoven composed music, or Shakespeare wrote poetry. He should sweep streets so well that all the hosts of heaven and earth will pause to say, here lived a great street sweeper who did his job well. See, work isn't just about making money, it's about making a difference. It's not just about making money, it's about making a contribution. It's not just about making money, it's about glorifying God as a follower of Jesus and one of God's creations. And here's breaking news. God can even use you in a job that you don't enjoy. And it's possible some of you are in a job you don't enjoy right now. And that might not actually be your life sentence. It could just be this season that you're in, but God can actually use you in a job that you don't enjoy. Again, Solomon, wisdom, dropped this one. God cares about honesty in the workplace, comma, your business is His business. He's interested. He's invested. He wants to see you do well. In fact, He'll often take how you approach the current job and the current season you're in as a foundation or a launch pad into the next season. And He's interested. Our business is His business. So commit your work to God. And then Solomon, that wise guy again, he encourages us to learn from the ants when it comes to work. Because look, question, have you ever seen an ant just kind of sitting around doing nothing? No, it doesn't happen. Ants know how to work. In fact, this was Solomon's observations, and he spoke this to someone who was unwilling to work and work hard. You lazy fool. That's like not a compliment. Look at the ant. Watch it closely. Let it teach you a thing or two. Nobody has to tell it what to do. It doesn't shut down solitaire on its computer screen when it hears the boss coming down the corridor. All summer it stores up food. At harvest, it stockpiles provisions. So look, lazy bones, how long are you going to laze around doing nothing? How long before you get out of bed? A nap here, a nap there, a day off here, a day off there, sit back, take it easy. Do you know what comes next? Just this. You can look forward to a dirt poor life, poverty, your permanent house guest. Now, Solomon's not advocating for us to become workaholics, though he is saying that when you're working, when you're on the job, when you're in your marketplace, when you're in the business environment, work hard, work well, work in a way that glorifies him. And by contrast, if you don't, if you do the bare minimum, if you're trying to maximize your sick days even though you're not sick, if you're, trying to get away with the bare minimum, then he's saying that's actually the ticket. That's actually the fast track to scarcity and poverty in your life. So here's what I recommend. If you're starting a new job or you're in a job already, get with your boss and simply ask them, what do you expect of me? And then when that's clear to you, exceed their expectations. If you're launching a new business, when you have the opportunity to interface with current clients, or maybe you're looking for new clients, find out how you can add value to them. Find out what they need from you, and then exceed their expectations. If you're wanting to move beyond your current job, doing the bare minimum, the least you can get away with, I can assure you, is not the way you're going to get the leg up to the new job, to the promotion that you want. Here's an example of some of the moving parts, and I'm going to give Louisa, my wife, massive props. She models this. She models this notion of committing your work to God and of learning from the aunts, although in her case it's learning from her parents, who were both Italian migrants, and they modeled hard work all of her life. One example is we moved back to Perth. We've been living interstate for a season. We moved back to Perth about 12 years ago, and Louisa took a job, an admin job, at her old high school. And it wasn't her dream job. However, it was the first job, having moved back, it was the first job that she was able to secure. And so she got there, and she would turn up early, and she would work hard, and she would stay late. She would do beyond the bare minimum. She would do jobs that weren't on her job description. She would look for opportunities to continually add value in that workplace. And she soon got the idea that she really liked education. So, hey, probably I should study. And so in addition to her working hard and working extra in the job, she took on some tertiary studies in order to become a qualified teacher. And all the while, in her admin job that wasn't her dream job, she continued to ask the question, how can I add value in this workplace? While studying and adding value to her life, to making herself more valuable in the marketplace. And it was hard. I mean, I watched it. She worked all day, every day. She studied all night, every night, and weekends. It was hard. It required a sacrifice, but it was always about this idea that I want to make sure that ultimately, in my job, in my work, that I'm going to be someone that glorifies God, that makes maximum contribution, that adds maximum value. And today, in fact, just at the beginning of this year, Louisa she's been actually in a qualified teacher role for several years as a result of studying the teaching qualifications. At the beginning of this year, in her current school, she got given her dream job. She got a promotion to her dream job. And if you only knew that little bit, and she'd tell you, oh yeah, this year I'm working in my dream job, and didn't know the backstory, you'd miss a massive, massive piece. And the piece is the backstory. The piece is that for this entire journey, Louisa has kept asking the same question, how can I add value today? How can I add value this quarter? How can I add value this year? She would do things and does do things that aren't on a job description. Sometimes things that are beneath her, sometimes things that are going to have to be a stretch for her, but always with this idea that I'm going to bring my best each and every day to my job. Well, contrast this with something that wise guy Solomon wrote He wrote this: the lazy person claims there's a lion out there. If I go outside, I might get killed. Which is like, what does that even mean? Well, here's the modern translation. It's not my job. I couldn't be bothered. Well, what do I get in return? So you can make excuses or you can make progress, but you can't do both. And so I would strongly encourage you, instead of asking, what's the least can I get away with and not get fired, ask the question, how can I add value? In fact, Michael Jordan famously said, winners always want the ball. So as a business owner, asking that question, how can I add value to my clients and customers? Employees, how can I add value to my company? Don't just make money, make a difference. And here's a bonus tip. In order to be someone who can add value, actually add value to your own development. Adding value and being committed to your own consistent personal and professional development will cause you to be someone who can add more value, that you won't just plateau, that you won't just be stagnant, that you'll be someone who's growing, and as a consequence of your growth, you can add more value. And add value to your technical expertise, as well as adding value and developing in your personal skills and your leadership skills. Those two things combined, your technical skills in your role and profession and industry and business, combined with improved personal and leadership skills, are powerful. A powerful 1-2 punch combination. Final words of wisdom from Solomon. A hard worker has plenty of food, but a person who chases fantasies ends up in poverty. The trustworthy person will get a rich reward, but a person who wants quick riches will get into trouble. I'm going to throw you now to one of our beloved friends and team members who understood that she was made for Mondays, that there was a God calling and purpose in her work. This is Christine.
I have been working in administration for about 25 years, and I have always made sure that the Lord was with me. I know that when I ended up with jobs, they were all from the Lord. There was no two ways about it. And I know that all of these jobs, He expected me to do something, as well as them being my provision. And a lot of the time I didn't know what He wanted me to do, but I would ask and I would listen, and then I would find what I needed to do. There were two very special stories involved in when I was working with Woolworths. Over a long period of time, I saw the Lord's miracles in incredible ways. One man came and found me he didn't even work on our floor, but he found me in the kitchen one day and wanted to tell me about his wife had just been diagnosed with breast cancer. Now I ended up praying for him, and the Lord said He wanted me to continue praying for his wife, which I did, and then a little bit later on she had a miracle and was completely cured, and after which they were so overjoyed that they both became Christians in another church. So I was really happy. There was one other story, which was a young girl. She was 21. She came to work with us. She had massive headaches, and she wanted to know more and more about Jesus. So every morning tea, I would sit with her with a cup of coffee, and we would talk about Jesus. within 3 weeks, she no longer came to work and she was in hospital, and they didn't anticipate that she was going to live. And her talking to me, with me about Jesus, was because she had given her heart to him during that period of time, and I knew that she was going to be with him. These things happen when you listen to the Lord in your workplace. You think there's nothing there. What am I going to do with this in this job? Ask the Lord. He'll tell you, or he'll show you. We all have a purpose.
We appreciate if you've already had the chance to give, and if you'd like to do so this week, the links are down below. Thank you so much for tuning in today. That's it from us, and we hope you can tune in next week for the last part of our series, Advance.